Ethan Ward had been riding since sunrise, following a faint trail through the rough Arizona highlands, when he spotted a shape near a dried riverbed that made him pull hard on his reins. At first he thought it was an abandoned hide or a discarded blanket, but as he rode closer, the shape moved. It was a woman, an Apache woman, lying half-conscious on the cracked earth. Her buckskin dress was torn at the shoulder, dust clinging to her skin, and her dark braid lay like a fallen rope beside her. When Ethan knelt beside her, she tried to push herself up, but pain shot through her leg and she fell back with a sharp breath. He lifted both hands to show he meant no harm, speaking softly even though he knew she might not understand a word. She watched him with fierce, guarded eyes, the eyes of someone raised to expect danger from strangers. Still, she didn't resist when he offered his canteen. She drank slowly, her hands trembling, her lips cracked from thirst. Ethan realized she couldn't walk, not even a few steps, and the night air in the mountains turned, bitter cold after sunset. Leaving her exposed was the same as signing her death sentence. He gathered what he could, fallen pine logs, sturdy branches, and sheets of brush. His hands worked quickly, more from instinct than thought. He had built cabins across half the frontier, but never one so small, so rushed and so necessary. She watched him the whole time, her breathing steadying, her expression softening each time he returned with more wood. Hours passed as he fitted logs, tied supports, and layered brush to block the wind. When he finally finished, the shelter looked closer to a miniature cabin than a lean-to, solid enough to keep her warm through the night. He helped her inside gently, setting a rolled saddle blanket beneath her head. From his pack, he gave her the last of his dried meat. She touched her chest and whispered a single word. "Nai." He didn't know the meaning, but he understood gratitude in her eyes. Ethan stayed outside the entrance, rifle across his knees, keeping watch over the quiet forest. A full moon climbed above the pines, silver light washing over the clearing. Twice he heard movement in the distance, but nothing came near. As the woman slept soundly, Ethan felt a strange, protective responsibility settling into his chest. Just as the first light of dawn touched the treetops, the ground beneath him began to tremble with heavy, deliberate footsteps far too large to belong to any ordinary man. Ethan stood frozen as the three massive Apache warriors stepped out of the tree line, their shadows stretching long across the clearing. Each one looked towering, broad shoulders, painted faces, spears taller than Ethan himself. Their presence made the air feel heavier, as if the mountain itself had decided to walk forward. Ethan's instinct told him to reach for his rifle, but something in their calm, steady movement stopped him. They didn't charge. They didn't shout. They simply observed him, silent and assessing, like hunters deciding what sort of man stood before them. Before Ethan could speak, the woman he had rescued pushed aside the doorway of the little cabin and stepped out, leaning on the wooden frame. Her brothers saw her, and the tension in their bodies shifted instantly, their fierce stances melting into relief. She spoke to them rapidly in Apache, her hands moving as she explained what happened, how she had fallen, how she couldn't walk, and how the stranger with the worn coat had built the shelter and kept watch all night. Ethan didn't know the words, but he recognized the gratitude in her tone. The eldest warrior, the one who seemed carved from pure stone, approached Ethan. Each step felt like a drumbeat in the earth. Ethan braced for anger or accusation or some challenge. Instead, the giant placed a heavy hand on his shoulder. "Our sister tells us you protected her," he said in a deep, steady voice colored with accent. "You worked when you could have walked away. You shared food. You kept danger away." His hand tightened, not threatening, but acknowledging. "This shows a strong heart." Before Ethan could respond, the second brother approached and placed a turquoise and bone necklace around Ethan's neck. It was not a casual gesture. It was ceremonial, deliberate. "This is for men who defend our blood," the warrior said. "We give it only with respect." The third brother, slightly younger and with sharper eyes, studied Ethan closely, as if measuring his spirit. "Our sister is named Nolan," he finally said. "She is brave. She hunts alone. She fell, but you found her." His gaze flicked toward the small cabin. "You built for her. Among our people, when a man builds shelter for a woman, we call him son-in-law." He let the words hang between them, a mix of seriousness and humor. Ethan blinked, unsure whether to laugh, nod, or deny. "I only wanted to help," he said quietly. The eldest shook his head. "Many speak such words. Few act on them." He gestured toward the rising sun. "You will come with us. Our family must know your name. You are guest." Nolan stepped beside Ethan then, touching his arm gently, a gesture that said more than any translation. He felt her brothers watching, amused but approving. With a deep breath, Ethan followed them toward the hidden mountain trails, realizing he was walking into a world he had never expected to enter. The journey into the Apache village wound through narrow mountain passages where sunlight slipped, between towering cliffs like thin blades of gold. Ethan followed the three giant brothers and Nolan, feeling every step take him deeper into a world he had only glimpsed from afar. When they finally emerged into a hidden valley, he stopped in quiet awe. Dozens of lodgepoles rose between the pines, smoke drifting from fires where women cooked and elders tended to tools. Children ran barefoot through the dust, their laughter echoing across the open space. The entire village paused the moment they saw the returning siblings, especially Nolan, who walked slowly but on her own feet. Nolan's mother rushed forward, her shawl trailing behind her as she reached her daughter and held her tightly. She checked every part of her body, whispering words of worry and relief. When she finally looked past Nolan and saw Ethan, her expression sharpened with suspicion. But the eldest son immediately began retelling what had happened, his deep voice carrying across the valley. The mother's face changed with every sentence, first wary, then surprised, and finally humbled. She approached Ethan, took his hands in hers, and bowed her head slightly. No English passed her lips, yet the gesture carried the weight of genuine gratitude. Ethan tried to blend into the background, but that was impossible. The villagers approached in small groups, quietly observing the white stranger wearing a ceremonial Apache necklace. Some of the older men nodded in approval. Others simply watched, curious. The youngest children stared without fear, whispering among themselves about the tall outsider who had saved Nolan. The brothers invited Ethan to sit near the central fire. A woman handed him roasted venison still steaming and a small cake made of ground corn and herbs. As he ate, the brothers explained the meaning behind calling him son-in-law. It was partly a joke, a way their people tested the courage of outsiders. But it was also an honor, something offered only to men who showed both bravery and sincerity. Ethan felt heat rise to his cheeks, unsure if he deserved such acknowledgement, but the brothers seemed confident in their judgment. As the sun dipped behind the ridges, the villagers prepared a small gathering. Drums echoed softly while elders told stories around the fire. One of the grandmothers draped a woven blanket over Ethan's shoulders, its colors warm and rich. The gesture made his chest tighten with unexpected emotion. Nolan sat beside him later, her voice quiet but full of meaning as she said, "Your path crossed mine for a reason." Ethan stared into the flickering flames, realizing that a single act of kindness had led him into a new chapter of his life, one he was no longer sure he wanted to walk away from.